everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on Trigun episode 4, and I'm really enjoying this OG series so far. I've been going back and watching it in the English dub in between episodes. Johnny Young Bosch is really good as Vash. He was surprisingly, in the English dub for episode 3, he was surprisingly very tender with his voice, and I'm so used to Johnny Young Bosch voicing Ichigo from the English dub of Bleach that I'm used to him being this like gruff, like Ichigo's a gruff, kind of like not a delinquent, but his voice is a lot like rougher than Vash is for this. So obviously he did Vash before he did Ichigo, so he was a little bit younger, but it's just there was like a tenderness and a softness to his voice in episode 3 that was really like surprising for him, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I love that. Like, now he's older, so, you know, his voice has changed a little bit as he's aged, but it was really nice. I really liked episode 3. The English dub is really good. I think 90s anime gets a bad rap sometimes for the English dub because the ADR studio maybe, depending on the studio that was doing the dub, maybe didn't treat the source material with, I know we do 4Kids as the big parody example of like, oh God, when we come to English dubs, but I feel so far like the English dub for Trigun has been really good, and they clearly took the source material and gave it a lot of care. And honestly, so far, Trigun is not that weird of a series. I know that I feel like this is something I could watch with my dad, and he wouldn't be like, what's this anime business? Like, it feels like a Western that has some sci-fi elements, and it doesn't feel like when you tell a mainstream audience anime, they probably think of something like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or something that has some elements that they're not familiar with, but this has a very Western feel, so I feel like maybe when they did the English dub, it was a lot more accessible, and so people like could get behind it a little more. I don't know. That's obviously generalizing, but that's just kind of my thoughts about it. But I still really like it a lot. We've also talked in the Discord about a number of things, whether it's apparently Hulu and Crunchyroll are using 2 separate versions in their streaming. So I am using the Crunchyroll version. So if you're trying to sync up my reactions with the video, the Crunchyroll version is the one that I'm doing, and it's a slightly different apparently than Hulu's. So I apologize. Mine's apparently like the 2003 release, and Hulu's is the 1998 release. Go figure. But aside from that, apparently I just choose the best time to pick anime to react to, because apparently they are going to be re-releasing the Trigun manga and Trigun Maximum manga in like deluxe hardback editions now, which is freaking amazing. Now, could we say that it's like my good luck charm that I chose this anime and suddenly these things are happening? You could say that. But I think the more likely reason is because Trigun Stampede has been successful, and so they're like, okay, well, let's just get the OG manga back up, because I'm not gonna lie, everybody on YouTube was like, oh, will you react to Trigun Maximum? Because it's a different adaptation, just like Trigun Stampede is a different adaptation. And I was like, well, I mean, maybe. And then I went to try to look them up, and you can't buy them. There was like one on Amazon that was $900, and I was like, I was like, Patreon! But there's like all these volumes there's like 14 volumes. And so I was like, but if they're redoing them starting this winter, then I may just wait and then do Trigun Maximum at the very end, because I'm sure I'll be through Trigun and into Trigun Stampede before the first hardback edition of Trigun Maximum even comes out. So it may be one of those things that I do react to the manga, but it's going to be a while later, or kind of like what I do with Real and other series like in-betweens. It might be that, because I want to support the official release, obviously, to give the authors, the mangaka, credit where credit's due. And also, plus, I like official translations, because sometimes, not that fan translations are bad, sometimes they're very good, but scan quality, things like that, viruses on your computer, things like that. I would rather support an official release, so I'm very excited that they're going to be releasing it, and I definitely want to react to it when we get to it. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I am going to be doing the Trigun movie in between Trigun and Trigun Stampede, for sure. I'm definitely going to be reacting to that. But the manga I may hold off and read as they come out. We'll just see. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I'm really enjoying this series. I think it's been a lot of fun so far. I've really enjoyed Vash's character. We're getting little bits and pieces of him as we go. And I like that it was said in the Discord, I think it might have been Nick that said this, or Nicholas, was talking about how the first 3 episodes do a really nice job of establishing people trying to uncover who people are. Like we had that like uncovering the monopolizing guy with the water, you know, in the ghost town, like uncovering that he's not so nice of a person, and Marianne is the sheriff or the marshal, and then uncovering in this last episode that the gunsmith, who seems like an alcoholic, has actually got a heart of gold. So, you know, uncovering like people are not what they seem on the surface. And Vash definitely is presenting like this goofy guy on the surface, but underneath it might be a totally different story. So we'll see, right? We'll see. But before we start, I want to give a special shout out over to Patreon to thank the patrons who are supporting me and my reaction and this channel. So I have 3 tiers on Patreon. Obviously, I'm thankful for any support, whether you donate $1, whether you donate $5, or you're on the philanthropy tier, whatever that may be. I am very grateful for your support. And I'm grateful for the support on YouTube and Twitter as well, because you all contribute with comments, with kind words, and I really am humbled and appreciate it. But our philanthropy tier get a shout out in these videos each week. And so I want to give a special shout out to those who help by going above and beyond to support me and this channel and doing what I really enjoy doing. So a special thanks to Edgar, to Dana, to Anime Annie, to Nameless Monster, to Tyrone, to Kenny, to Arjo, to Shimoyama, to Be Happy, to Translucent Men, to Eric, to Sunspots, and Alex Cornejo. I really, truly appreciate your support, and I'm very grateful for all the support that you give me. So all of my love. But yeah, so we kind of, last week's episode, the last 2 episodes have kind of been very one-shot episodic episodes. I'm not going to feel bad if that's most of the series. It feels like a lot of OG anime from the 90s was more episodic with a very subtle thread running through it. Like a lot of anime now have arcs. They have arcs that are like 3 or 4 episodes or like an entire season arc, right? And they feel very like big and expansive. Whereas a lot of 90s anime, I feel, are just kind of like every episode, something new happens. So you don't have to have watched every episode to get what's going on, but there's usually like a subtle little thread running through the entire series that if you do watch everything, you'll get a bigger picture. And at the very end, in the climax, it will all come together for some type of conclusion. So we'll see if that's the case with Trigun, but that's how it is so far, and I really like it. So, yay, rah. But with that being said, I'm really excited, y'all, to watch this new episode and see what all we get. So we are going to start episode 4 of Ye Olde Trigun and see what happens. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this, y'all. Wow, this show gets better and better. I am living for this, honestly. Oh my gosh, what a great episode. What I like most about this series is that it is both very funny, but it is also dropping the subtlest little clues of things that you know are going to keep adding up as the story goes, because we're only on episode 4, right? And it's like a 26 episode series, so we've got plenty of episodes to get through, but they're already giving us like a lot to play with in terms of the narrative and lots of things happening. So I'm really excited because I am very curious to see what all we're going to get as the story goes on. And it seems like we're building up little tiny things with Vash, like the graveyard, his character, the way he responds to everything, and just learning about what type of person Vash is. Vash is a pacifist. He doesn't like violence. No, which is hilarious because he's Vash the Stampede. He's the one causing supposedly all this destruction and death. But no one dies. Well, not death. No one dies. But he caused all this destruction in his wake. I'm getting lots of similarities to other characters from other series that were coming into my head a lot of times. Like I get like, speaking of Donghua and of Chinese animation, I think of Wei Wuxian from Modao Zushi in that, and I know that I'm sure MXTX has not watched Trigun, but Wei Wuxian in Modao Zushi has a very like kind of trickster vibe to him, but he has a really big heart inside, right? And I get that vibe with Vash, that he's kind of a trickster character, but he's got a good heart on the inside. I also get a lot of Shi Lian from Heaven Official's Blessing, also by MXTX. Shilian's character is like a cinnamon bun. He's got a little sadistic side to him on the inside, but on the outside he's mostly like this innocent cinnamon bun. But you can tell he's just been through the worst things imaginable, and it's jaded him. And so I feel like Vash has been through something traumatic, and it's jaded him. And he's trying his best to work through and not be violent, but he's on a mission for something, right? He's got the bag, he's got the gun. Why does he have them? If he's not on a quest of revenge, then what is he doing? So there's that mystery, right? And obviously, I don't want to know spoilers. I don't want to know. I want to find out as we go, and I don't want any hints or clues. But I'm the type of person that if stuff is dropped now, I don't want to know about it, because later on when we connect, the dots will connect themselves and I'll be like, oh, back in that episode, and go back to it, right? But this episode was really, really good. When we get past the OP. And I like that the OP is dropping, like, the OP drops little tiny hints of what's to come in the episode, and it gets you really excited. You're like, oh yeah, awesome. I think what Nicholas was talking about with the OP changing, on Discord they were saying that in one version the OP changes, in one version it doesn't. So the one that Crunchyroll's using is the one that does change. So and I guess the Hulu one doesn't. So that's interesting. I like that we have cars, taxis in this desert. That's a thing. I thought we were just going to travel around on our little tauntauns, our Western desert tauntauns, until we get to place. But no, apparently maybe it's kind of like horses, I guess. But there are horses in this series too, aren't there? So wait a minute. Or maybe there's not. But I feel like maybe the little the Thomases are the cheap way of travel, and then if you've got a car, it's a big thing. Or maybe since it's out in the middle of the desert, the Thomases won't travel through the sandstorm. But yeah, so Vash gets out and gives the money to old Mario here, our taxi cab driver, saying it's 500 yards to town. And he says, thanks for the lift. He doesn't like argue with it. He just takes the money and goes. And then the guy drives off, but Vash is like, at first it seems like he was chewing, gritting his teeth, but he was chewing gum to put in the gun later. So that's what that was. I like that was just a little tiny gesture with his mouth, just like and you feel like he's just grimacing, but he was chewing gum that's going to be used later on. I love stuff like that. I love the little tiny details like that come back later. But he's at the graveyard. Now the question is someone that Vash knows buried here? Or is there another reason why he visited the graveyard? Like what was the purpose of it? And again, what I also like about this show is that everything that is kind of set up, it's set up way in advance, and so it pays off later, and you feel kind of rewarded as the audience, like, oh, that's what that meant. Like, you get to kind of figure it out, and it's kind of fun, right? And so they're stuck there during a sandstorm. Millie is quite the optimist. Millie is like the glass half full. She's like, oh, we'll just make a vacation out of it. And Meryl's like, I would rather go somewhere quieter for vacation. Like, she'd rather be in like a library all day, right? Than to deal with like the noisy crowd. I also get very, Peppermint Patty and Marzel from Charlie Brown. Like, I get, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. Like, I just get that, like, only it's funny because Millie looks like Peppermint Patty, but acts like Marzel. So that's kind of funny. And then Meryl's the exact opposite. It's great. But we get the build-up with the girl who plays cards and beats the guys, and then the butler standing over her. And if you look, the hostage, the guy that takes them hostage, he's sitting at the bar in front of her. I didn't know where he was in comparison to the episode at first, because they just kind of like, he blends in with the background a little bit, which is funny. But I like the reveal that she is the good card player, but she can afford to lose because she can afford to lose cards if she wants to because her dad has all the money. So she doesn't feel like she's threatened in any way. And then the guy says, I'll play with your life on the line. We'll be playing for your life. Love and peace. That's what this town is. I feel like Vash is like, I am here for two things, love and peace. And he wants, which is hilarious because he's been causing all this destruction in his wake, or others have been causing it and blaming it on Vash. So we meet Stan and Dick and Bostock, like all these names. Oh my gosh. But we meet Stan, the sheriff, and he says 3 things I can't tolerate in this world. He says people who put ice in alcohol, and I'm like, ugh, you drink alcohol without ice? Gross. The pattern on the silhouette scorpion. What? and slime who don't appreciate the tranquility. I don't know what the silhouette scorpion is. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I'm sure someone in the comments will point that out. That part I'm not clear about. I wonder if there's a way to look it up. Silhouette scorpion. What does that mean? The pattern on a silhouette scorpion. Oh, someone actually has like an answer to this. They say a silhouette scorpion is a representation of a scorpion. Think of clip art scorpion. Oh, that's what it is. I won't read anymore just to avoid spoilers. Oh, so it's just like a guy who hates like scorpion silhouettes. That's such a random thing. Weird. So we meet old Stan the sheriff. I swear every guy on the entire police force has the exact same haircut. What the heck? I don't know if that was intentional or if it was just like stock imaging and they just did it to make them all look the same, making it easier to animate. But the guy, Dick, that's the guy writing down the notes that keeps scratching his inner ear with his pen. He reminds me of the police officer from Twin Peaks that works at the police thing. He's kind of like a bumbling, kind of goofy police guy that's on the force. That he's kind of like, he's pretty dense sometimes. Sometimes he's just a really lovable character, but he's kind of dense. And this guy, Dick, reminds me a lot of him, which I don't know. This came out in 98, so Twin Peaks had been around. I don't know if the mangaka Twin Peaks was kind of pretty heavy in the zeitgeist, so I don't know if that influenced this in any way. But he just can't stand a robbery in my jurisdiction, not on my watch. Stan reminds me of Dot Pixis from Attack on Titan, only personality-wise, much, much different. The only thing he has in common is he wanted to drink some wine, and if he had been in Attack on Titan's world, he could have definitely had that, although, don't know if you want to drink the wine in that. So it says, ask what the situation is. And he says, Dick, inform the Earl! I swear there were some like catchphrases in this episode that I wanted to use, like, Dick, inform the Earl! I would definitely use that in real life. But basically, they talk about the hostage situation, that there's 4 hostages, becoming 5 when Vash gets involved, and his daughter is seemingly one of them. A girl who loves cards is among the hostages, Mr. Bostock. And he's like, what are their demands? And they want $10 million. And he's like, well, you're the only one capable in town of having this money. The thing that's kind of funny about all of this, when it all like pans out, is that they don't like Bostock, even though they work for him. They're jealous of his money and everything. And they kind of want him to go down, which is so wild, right? They set this whole thing up and they're like, we can get rid of him. And he's like, they won't get away with this. I just love the kind of melodrama this episode has where he's just like, this is too far. Like, it's very 90s and I really enjoy it. The hooligans will come swarming. They'll use her as a plaything and leave her to die in the desert. And then when he says, you speak with the wisdom of past experience. I thought that when he first said that, when Stan was saying you have past experience with such things, he was referring to like maybe he lost someone into a similar situation. But no, what ends up coming out is that he was the cause of that situation for others, like the guy who's holding them hostage now. He was the one that was assaulting others. Because he says, Grim Reaper Bostock. Yeah, and he's like, shut up, Stan! If you're the law in this town, then concentrate on my daughter's rescue. So yeah, I like that they set up they give us the Grim Reaper nickname early on, so then it will come back when we find out that he basically took over this entire property and this land for himself and had the sheriff and the others kill the people so he could take the property, which is insane, right? And the guy who's holding them hostage lost his parents in the crossfire. So yeah, makes sense. It's just such a great way of doing narrative in this episode, right? And the fact that Stan pulls the gun on him and says, never order me around. This isn't the old days. Like this episode, this little exposition exchange between Stan and Bostock does so much good for the episode because it gives you so many things. It tells you that Bostock is a man of privilege, that has money, that he maybe used to be involved in some shady business, but now he has a daughter and he's trying to maybe do better. That Stan is the sheriff and has known him for a long time. They have history, that he was probably involved in the stuff Bostock was wanting that maybe was corrupt. And also that Stan is the sheriff, takes that job seriously and doesn't believe that he has the right to be ordered around by Bostock anymore. It's not like it once was. We got like 6 or 7 nuggets of information in a 30-second dialogue. It's like, oh, I love I love when stories set up stuff like this. It's great. And Bostock, and the power dynamic between the two of them, between Bostock and Stan, where Bostock has the money and the influence, but Stan has the firepower and seems like he has the authority, and the tension between them is so interesting, right? And then Vash shows up. I said this in the reaction, but if you ever watched the 1990s cartoon Freakazoid, the main character is Freakazoid, and Vash, whose hair not only kind of looks like it, but also has the same chaotic, crazy energy where he's just like doing the fish face and going and dancing around, drawing attention to himself so he'll get taken in. Vash is very intelligent because he seems like he's an idiot here, but he's drawing attention and seeming to be not threatening so he can go in and get kidnapped and assess the situation. And you see in his mouth, you see the gum there, right? So you get like little hints dropped. The music he's listening to is like this little bebop electronic. It's great. I love the animation of Bostock being like, oh, like it's very, very dramatic. He's too busy dancing to notice. And then I like, he's just got like the Teru legs, the bow legs, as he's like goes in and gets taken in. And they're like, are you just an idiot? I love it. And Meryl and Millie are like, why are you here? And he's like, help me. I loved Vash speaking in English throughout all this. It was so humorous and adorable. I loved it. It was absolutely great. The comedy of Dick being like, there are now 5 hostages, sir. I love the humor of this show. It's so good. And they're all about getting the money. So Vash, be gentle, brother. I won't try anything. Take my gun. I thought at first it was like a fake gun that he gave him, but it wasn't. It was just, it's been tuned up. And then, oh my God, him landing on Meryl's lap and being like, hello. My shipper heart. I ship Meryl and Vash so hard. I'm like, yes, please. I was like, girl. And I love that she just kicks him away with her legs. She's just like, no, get off my lap. Life's been hard since I met you guys. And she's like, I can't take it. The sentiment is mine. I love it. And that's when he notices the beautiful daughter of Bostock that is in need of being rescued. And Vash, of course, because he just loves a beautiful lady. I love that he just like inches closer with the giant like heart eyes. God, and Meryl and them were like, what a creep. But it's so innocent how he does it. Like, we know Vash is a little bit of a flirt. He's a goofy, clumsy flirt. Not a great flirt, but, you know, he tries. Bless him. And then he gets close enough and gets knocked out. I also love that the moment he gets knocked out, he like lifts his head up and he's all serious. He's like, that's no way to treat a lady. Like, he just like instantly, he looks like a boy band member when he lifts his head up. It's just that expression. The art style ranges that happen with Vash throughout this episode is just amazing. So the one guy, Gene, gets super freaked out by her and gets really offended when, you know, the butler's sitting there being like, oh, please forgive me. But she's like, oh, it's fine. To my dad, this is just chump change. Whatever you ask, he'll give you. And she was trying to like pass it off as like just a moment of, oh, don't worry, just let us go. My dad has all this money. He'll give you whatever you want. But they get offended by it because they're like, girl, your dad killed our families. We're not just doing this for chump change. We want revenge on him. It's not just about the money. And so, yeah, John getting freaked out, or Gene, however they pronounce it, it all makes sense later. And I think that Vash causes the distraction with the tables that makes all the commotion that allows the one guy to stop the gun. It got pretty dark there for a second where they had the gun barrel in her mouth. I was like, we were all having fun and games and a good time. And then suddenly it's like, oh shit, no, never mind. Never mind. This just got really serious. And so they basically threaten her. And then poor Vash, he tries to like stand up for her and they end up like kicking him in the face. And then he realizes inside the gun, right? Which gun does he look at? Inside the one he had was a bunch of gum. And Meryl's like, no way. I wonder if Meryl will start to come around to Vash being Vash the Stampede or not. It's questionable, right? And he's like, couldn't be. Couldn't be that this bumbling idiot is actually insanely smart and is just avoiding violence. Couldn't be. So we get our Suicide Squad picked out, hand-picked by old Stan. They all look ridiculous. The one guy, okay, the one with the 3 little hairs poking out that has his head halfway buried in the suit. I feel like there's been a character from Spyro the Dragon. Like a villain that looks like him. It's such a weird design. I don't know. And they're just like licking the guns, showing that they're kind of just feral. They don't have any sense of justice. They're just hired men doing whatever. And Bostock's like, how do we know they're not going to shoot my daughter? Which is a valid concern. And they're like, well, as long as you pay them, they won't hit her. And it's like, He's like, give them what they want. Just don't let them touch my daughter. And meanwhile, Vash trying to like peek up her skirt. I'm like, dude, Vash, dude. But you know what? As kind of dated as that humor is, I can't get mad at Vash because he's just so damn innocent and pure that I'm just like, I can't be mad at him. He's too good. He's too innocent, right? I love Meryl just being like, I guess he gets kicked in the head. She's like, never mind. This guy is definitely not Vash the Stampede. And so they're waiting for the money. And she assures them her father's coming. They find out Vash the Stampede is somewhere in the town when he's been there the whole time. And then they show up with the money, and it's a trap. The tension was really good, like peering around the mirror and seeing the henchman in the corner and knowing it was a trap from that. That was really well done. I like that. And then the poor ninja guy, he gets shot right there, and they run over Gene. I can't believe that they just ran him over. And the animation was just like, just spare no expense. They just ran him over and then like just Mad Maxed their way into the what's the Stephen King movie where it's the semis that Maximum Overdrive. They just do like Maximum Overdrive and just run right into the building. I love though the callback of Vash having the knife on his boot that we seen in the previous episode and seeing him use it to cut the rope. Like little tiny things about Vash slowly add up and are used. It was like the shoe with the knife wasn't a one-time use, one-trick pony. It was something that's coming back and being referenced. And I love that. That's just such a great, it's not a gimmick. It's just something really cool. And so, yeah, these guys can't shoot for shit though. It's like, what the heck? I paused it just now on the part where Vash is like, the sheriff's not normal, and Meryl just looks so miserable. She's like, I'm still tied up. Vash clearly is not. And Vash realizes that he's not tied up anymore, so he's like, oh shit, I need to try to pretend to be tied up again. And the hijacker's like, no, I figured out you're smarter than you seem. Like, no, the cat's out of the bag. I know what's going on. So like, yeah. And then the robber man, they ask for him. And so poor Vash just doesn't like violence, which is so interesting. But the thing about it is, Vash doesn't like violence, but he's not afraid to be threatening. And I get I'm watching Vinland Saga at the same time. I feel like what Vash is now is the more comedic version of what Thorfinn wants to be. So I'm like, what? All these things adding up. It's great. And we can talk Vinland Saga spoilers in the comments, but I'm like, so interesting. And then he says, Rim. Is Rim the black-haired girl from the OP? I don't want to know, but I'm sure we'll find out. But Rim is clearly something that Vash has a past with, interestingly enough. And then I like that he takes the bullets, and the bullets knock a guy down. Like, what the heck? And then what we don't see is Meryl. What we don't see is Meryl shooting. His eyes were closed during that scene. If you look back on that episode, his eyes are closed as Meryl shoots the light from above that lands on his head. But he saw her shoot, so he knew what was going on. And then the one guy, it turns and you see him shoot the other guy in the foot. That was great. And then, yeah. And Meryl's like, why didn't you shoot him? And he's like, I don't like pain. Well, Millie answers the question for him. She's like, he didn't want to shoot him. Like, Millie says the obvious. He's like, he didn't want to do it. And Vash, I love that he has this like puppy dog look on his face and says, I don't like pain. And Meryl kind of writes it off, but it's like that one line, it's like, oh no, that means that Vash has suffered some major shit, and he's kind of renounced violence because of it. And the hijacker, the kidnapper, the way he looks at Vash after he says that is like there's like a spark there, a connection where he kind of gets what he's saying. He's like, oh, you probably understand what I've gone through then, right? And so they agree to stop. She agrees to stop her dad, and he says, do you know the huge graveyard northeast of town? And the hijacker says, our parents lie under that ground, so barren even corpse weeds won't grow. And so we see them on the farm, like everything. There's the Thomases are like horses, like with the plows. My memories of them working covered in dirt. And oddly enough, I swear the field there looks like a U.S. flag. It's kind of weird. And I thought they said Orleans, like New Orleans. I'm like, is this an AU of the U.S.? Because it is the Wild Wild West. What? Fascinating. After 10 years, they made the sandy soil arable. It was a huge accomplishment. And just then, there came, and you see Bostock with the longer hair, like looking younger 18 years ago, and you see Stan in the background, right? And they go in there and they just show them like shooting the whole town. And then, yeah, 15 years ago, the land they'd put everything into, and you see him like over, like you see the hijacker standing over all the corpses was stolen by your father, and how he would, from that you can get the moment he said he was going to swear revenge. I don't care about the money. I'm going to take my revenge from 15 years ago. And then they say you can't forget something like that. Vash says that. Interesting. So we have them all go outside now. I like that Vash like checks on the one guy being like, okay, the bullet went through, you're fine. And then checks on the other guy saying like, you're going to be okay. We're going to get your pals to help you. And then, so they agree to let Bostock duel the hijacker, the Grim Reaper, in exchange for his daughter's safety. What I love about this scene though, is that they're doing the duel, right? And he's like, fine, I'll do it to keep my daughter safe. And Stan's like, how the love of a daughter and passage of time can change a man. I mean, yeah, so you went from like the Grim Reaper to going in this duel against this man that he clearly doesn't have the advantage against because it'll keep his daughter safe. And Stan frames it as something kind of weak, saying that, oh, well, because of your daughter and how much time has passed, you've gotten soft. But I don't think, but obviously Vash doesn't think so. And I like the girl watching as he goes and stands up there, and Meryl looks over at Vash, who's just staring. And then they let the girl go. And what does Meryl say there? When they let the girl go and she goes back over towards them, he says, you have what you want, let her go. And she says, forgive me. And then Bo's talking to him about the face. It's hard to have a past you can't bury. And she says that right next to Vash, who I'm sure has a past that they can't quite bury, and that's what they're running away from. So interesting. And then Vash goes up to the girl and tells her, don't look away. I know you're not foolish enough to stay ignorant. That line is so, like, he gets so serious in that moment, being like, you have to watch this. This is important. You need to know how this goes down. And she's like, I know. Like, I love that dynamic. That's so good. The feelings of the people your life was built on. Like, that's such a good line. Like, he's like, don't look away, because these two in their duel, it's a matter of things that are beyond you, but that are tied to you, and you need to know about them. I'm like, oh my God, like, you need to know about your past. And I love that she's like, I know. And then the thing of it is, even if he did those horrible things, he's still my dad. She's like, I have to love him no matter how bad or selfish I was. To me, he was always my daddy who loved me. She's like, even though he did those awful things, she's like, how can I hate him? He's my father. It's like, that's so hard, right? And she says it to where clearly they can hear. And the man, I think he goes soft because of her being there. And he doesn't kill him. And what gets me throughout all of this is at the moment, like, Vash is just waiting to see what will happen, because it's not his duel. It's between these two. They don't have any business in it. But the moment he shoots, and doesn't. And Vash is just watching to see what's going to happen. And he shoots, but he doesn't kill him. The sun comes out. He shoots him in the shoulder. Like, he clearly was the first shot. He could have made it to where he was dead, but he chose not to. And Vash having the single tear. They play it off as a joke. They play it off making it funny. Like, oh, Vash is crying. Isn't that funny? But no, he was sincerely like, oh my God, you spared his life. Thank you. Like, I didn't want you to kill someone and to have to bear that weight, right? Yeah, there's some stuff that's happened to Vash. We don't know what it is, but something's gone down, right? Something's gone down, but he's going to be okay. But then Stan shows up and he's like, oh, well, but this wasn't how we were wanting it to happen. We wanted Bostock to die because then we'd have an excuse to kill all of you and we'd look like heroes in the paper. And then, oh no, Bostock is dead. I guess all the fortune will go to someone else. Like, what a vaudeville villain type move. And everybody's like, are you serious? And I like that Meryl's like, how could you even have this position as sheriff? That's not cool. And he says that he was jealous that Bostock got all the prestige and he couldn't move up the ladder higher than a sheriff. I'm like, higher than a sheriff? You are literally the one that calls the shots in the town. Like, what else did you want? Apparently he didn't get any sweet wine in the sheriff gig. I'm like, Bostock, if you just gave it a few bottles of Chardonnay to your friend here, we may not have had a problem. But what gets me is that Vash, in this moment, looks over to Meryl and he's like trying to give her like some Morse code, being like, hey, like get ready to shoot this guy. And she's like, what? You toothless stray dogs. I felt like Bungo Stray Dogs is happening, like with Vash. It feels grand to be superior. And yeah, he's like trying to draw her attention. She's like, what? I love it. She's like, excuse me? And he's like, one question. How does it feel to kill passive human beings? He says, do you feel anything when you burn your garbage? And Vash is like, I see. Nifty answer, you piece of trash. I won't feel bad then. Like, that's literally, he's like, I won't feel bad for doing this. And then he like gives her the wink and like takes the one guy down. And Meryl with the coat full of pea shooters. Her cloak is not just fashion, it is firearms. I'm like, I just like the little one shots. That's so adorable. I'm like, what? And what a badass. And he's like, what? And she just shoots the guns. And I love that she just tosses them as she shoots them. Like, shoots the guns out of his hands. And I love that Millie's like, awesome, ma'am. As she goes to collect the guns to reload them. And she's like, how'd you know I was armed? And he's like, because you were helping me in the bar. He's like, I could recognize the smell of gunpowder and grease instantly. Meaning that our boy Vash has been around gunfire and grease quite a bit. Whatever that amounts to. So yeah, lots of stuff happening. And then Stan has the gun pointed at Vash. And Vash, you know, he could have fired it right at Stan's head. But instead he just clocks him with it. Because Vash doesn't kill people. He's like, I'm not going to kill you. But, and that was such a badass moment. He tosses the sheriff star in the air. And then Meryl's like, poo-poo. And shoots right through it, being like, you're not fit to be sheriff anymore. I like Vash and Meryl as a team. I'm just saying. I like them as a team. And he says, this land, repeat after me, this land is made of love and peace. Love it. Love it. And that's the episode. Oh! It was so good. It sets up that Vash is very anti-violence. But for some reason, he's on this quest. We don't know why. He's either looking for something or running for something. One of the two. He has a past that he apparently is having trouble getting away from. He has this past. Destruction's tied to him, even though he doesn't like violence. And if he's trying to get away from something, what is it? And if he's trying to find something, what is it? And we're slowly getting little bits and pieces. But I love that Vash has the ability to be so stoic and serious. And then yet be so comedic and goofy. Like, it's such a great, because, and here's the thing, he has this, like, despite the fact that we know there's probably a dark past tied to him and probably some crazy messed up stuff, there's not any ill will or maliciousness tied to his character at all. Like, you know, you have characters like Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen who is like really goofy on the outside, but underneath you know that there's like some serious hardcore like emotions there. But Gojo gives off kind of like a threatening vibe where you're like, oh, I don't need to mess with you. Vash doesn't give off a threatening vibe at all, but at the same time, when he gets serious, you're like, oh, I probably shouldn't mess with you. You seem like you got this under control. That's what it kind of gives out, right? It's interesting. So yeah. It was just a solid episode. I don't know. It didn't feel like we got a proper resolution to this episode. So I'm curious if we're going to get more, if we're going to continue this storyline on into episode 5 or not. I feel like this wasn't a proper conclusion. I almost thought we were going to have like a 2-parter. I thought for a second this was going to go into like have a cliffhanger ending and then us go into episode 5. But it doesn't feel like we had resolution with the girl and Bostock. So maybe next episode we will get that before we move on. I guess, perhaps. It feels like every adventure we've had so far, we've left the scenario, we've left this town and said our farewells and we're like, okay, job is done, see y'all. But we haven't done that yet in this town. So I'm thinking maybe the plot will bleed over in episode 5 and we'll get some resolution there before we move on. Maybe. I don't know, but I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I really enjoyed this episode and I'm excited to see what we get next. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Trigun. Bye!